What's up? BenjaCon 2021, day 6. Hang around because I've got John Diaz, the awesome game designer, one of the younger bucks coming up. Worked with him at Rockstar Games. He's been through Bungie. He's been to EA. He's done stuff with Amazon. Came out of Full Sail. Dude's got a crazy history. Dude's got a badass work ethic. Just somebody I really wanted to talk to. And we're also brothers in the podcast game. Started a game development podcast called Autoplay Area. He's going to be doing basically what the great talk show hosts, you know, your Joe Rogans, your, what's the old dude's name? Larry King, you know, David Letterman. He's going to be doing that for game development. So what we're doing here with Mr. Benja's ADD experience is a little more of a general type of art design and development. He focuses in on the game design part of that. So any game design stories, questions you have for that stuff, make sure you bring it up, pop it in the comments. Definitely glad to see everybody here. And we'll definitely be able to answer and field all your different questions. And by the way, if you've been on here before, make sure that you know, or you haven't been on, make sure, you know, you throw in a comment, let us know what you're thinking about these, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, what's important to you about these, and what makes them fun. Because as I said, this is an interactive and growing thing, and you are a participant. You're a part of this whole process with me. You let me know, I talk with you, I let you know. I may go to your page and steal some of your ideas, but that's how it works in this internet game. We all learn from each other. That's how it is. M. Cuevas, FNA Online, J. Kingpin, Zeroed In, Yellin' Jeff, good to have you all. Thank you for stopping by. We are about to get this thing rolling with John. We'll make this happen. I got my cup today. What's good, my man?
Yo, can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Definitely.
All right. Yeah, we live. I'm
That's
live
right.
with Benja at BenjaCon. Oh, shit.
That's right, baby.
Yeah.
We don't give up.
That takes me back, man. That takes me back to the golden era.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
By the way, you know, it's funny. I don't know if you caught before, but I started doing this whole BenjaCon thing because I was so used to the con season, meeting up with people, having different discussions, just, you know, minds rubbing elbows with different people. I even met Cliffy B at a Comic-Con, you know, ran into him in a hotel room. He was having an argument with somebody. And after the argument, we just kind of ran into him. He's like, "Hey, how's it going? Sorry about that." It was like, it was like all
sorry to bring you into that.
Yeah, it was like all awkward, but it was like, "No, man, it's cool. I get it. Things happen. Stressful time at Comic-Con. What was he doing there? You're right. Epic Games had something going on, and they were showing up at Comic-Con. I think he was connected somehow. I forgot the exact situation.
Creatives, we're passionate, bro. We're passionate. Once you get us started on something, especially if it's our own art, you know, that goes right to the field. We got no armor for that.
That's right, baby. And you are one of the passionate ones. That's why I definitely want to have you on. That's why I wore my mean little cuss shirt today, because it's all about the passion and the grimy get down. So
it looks like Wolverine to me, but
yeah, I call that the mean little cuss. That's my.
Oh yeah, I like it.
And I got the high flyer up on the wall here.
The who that?
High flyer.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You got to school me. You got to school me.
Have you been watching the Disney Plus shows?
Yes. Oh, Falcon.
That's your boy.
Oh, damn, man.
These are my pop culture kind of, you know, representations. But
this is what happens when I'm not going to conventions physically, man. Everything is virtual, right? There's only so much that can stick.
Yeah, we got Ace WTF, Dat Boy Javon, Lenny Love, Yellin' Justin here.
Oh my gosh, yo, this is family right here. I got La Comadre right here. That's my goddaughter's mother. I got the cousin coming in from Orlando. I got Ace What the Fuck probably coming through from New York. I don't know if he moved, but dope that you guys are in here.
Yeah, man. Hey, you know what? Right off, I want to get into that a little bit because I looked at your profile page and saw. Let me go through this. NYC, got you. MCO, Orlando, got you. San Diego, got you. LA,
When we met,
got you.
When we connected, yeah.
Yule, I had to look that one up. Montreal.
Yo, Canada's airports have fucked up codes if you don't know. Yeah.
So yeah, Yule looked you up, got you. Seattle, got you. There was one in there that I didn't get. ATX.
You don't know about Austin, Texas?
Okay. You know what's funny? I looked up ATX airport code, and the first thing it told me was Kazakhstan.
Oh. Do I got it fucked up? I might have it fucked up then. I might have it fucked up.
I don't know. I don't remember the Austin code, but yeah. Okay.
My gosh.
What were you doing in Austin?
Yo, so Austin, so keep in mind, New York born and bred, then moved down to Orlando to do the school thing, right?
Full Sail?
Yes, I went in to the hyperbolic time chamber that is Full Sail. I walked in, not knowing a thing about game development, and I came out ready to bust out some scripts, some levels, and do the damn thing on some consoles. And when you got no experience in the game, I mean, you have a pretty interesting route, right? Like you ended up in damn near Silicon Valley, but like for me, coming at it from the East Coast, there was nobody around that I knew of that was making games, right? So I'm throwing out my application and applying left, right, up and down, anywhere and everywhere. And the first place that bit came at me from Texas, right? And so I'm an East Coast kid, no idea what goes west of that what a different time zone even looks like, right? And they found me, it was Midway Austin, man. They found me in Orlando. They were trying to get cheap talent, and they got me and gave me my first shot, bro. And I kicked in the door, and there was no turning back from there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was, and it's a big hub down there, right? I think it's grown since, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But Texas got a lot of deep roots, right? Like, Origin and
Id's out there too, right?
Id's in Dallas. You know what I'm
okay.
saying? Yeah, Austin, damn it, man, they're gonna kill me for not remembering. It's like Origin Systems and the other one, somebody gotta know, man. Jeff gotta know. Jeff's Midway blood.
Yeah, somebody look up some game companies in
Austin.
Look up in Austin.
90s Austin games, man. Like Ultima, whoever made Ultima, and some of those.
Okay. So you can see the comments too?
Yeah. Damn, this IG Live thing is nice, man. I was on it watching some of the earlier days of the BenjaCon. Yo, what year is this, by the way? This is like the second annual BenjaCon?
This is the second time I've done this live thing. Last year I did it over Facebook just because I had more friends there, and I like Facebook more than Instagram. I still kind of do, but Instagram is good for this. So this year I was like, let me try and jump on and see what happens. But I've been having these types of sit down, discuss art design and development discussions for a while. So that's why I was just so confident. Yeah, BenjaCon, I'm going to get my people together, and everybody comes through because they know the con vibe and how we get down. So
yeah, man. It wasn't until I got to the West Coast, man. It wasn't until I got to San Diego that I got to get into that world, right? Like, you don't get to live in San Diego too long before summertime rolls around and E3 comes out the woodwork, and everybody's taking off of work and be like, oh, peace, I'm gone this weekend. I'm like, what you mean? What's going on? Like, oh, we're going up to E3 in LA. It's like, I don't want to come to work. I want to go up to LA. I want to see what's popping up there.
And they don't schedule anything either. They don't schedule like any heavy work at that time. Like, you know what? Let's not.
It's opportune that way for sure. Nobody wants to miss out, right? Things can happen from one day to the next. E3 is huge though, right? Like, for anybody on the outside looking in, E3 was that one time where all the magazines back in the day, right? Like the EGMs, the Game Pros, the Game Informers, that's when they would get the scoop on all the new games coming out, right? Everything, or whatever was in development, all the Nintendo announcements, Sony announcements, Sega announcements, all happened, at least, again, outside of looking in, it seemed to all happen at E3, that one time of the year in June, July. And I remember, man, I headed up there. I think all you guys were already there the day before. I think my first one was, 2010. 2010 was my first E3, right? So turn of the decade. Probably had like no facial hair at the time, and I'm going up there super starry-eyed, like a fan, bro, like a consumer. Like I forgot I was a developer. You know what I'm saying? I'm rolling up in there just like do they happen at the LA Convention Center? Is that where it typically goes down?
Yeah.
And I'm out there, bro, and I super geeked out. I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, I'm at E3. Oh shit! You know.
Yeah.
Dude. Oh man.
And you got in some party action too, right? The side events and the after parties.
Oh man, I think those are hazy memories, unfortunately, for me, Benja. I wanted to go in and share some of my time and stories with you, but living in California, man, I also was acquainted for the first time with medical grade plants.
Oh,
and that just kind of, it's taken a lot of special memories and put them in a little bubble for that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if there was no pictures, then it's hard for me to recall. But damn it, man, around that time, I just remember it was really the golden era of games. Like, I mean, I remember, so obviously it was a big year for us at the time, 2010, right? We had just released Red Dead Redemption.
Outlaws to the end.
Outlaws to the mother end. We all wore our shirts, our red and black, you know, so we're rolling out there like NWO Wolfpack style, rolling deep with the bloodshed on the shirt. We stood out everywhere we went. Some of us kept it underneath our clothes, like we were straight up hiding our superhero costumes and shit. You know, we didn't want to get mobbed by press and fans. You know, we had to keep a low profile because press kind of sniffs it out. You know, they're like, "Ooh, Rockstar dead. I want the scoop." And, you know, we don't say anything. We roll.
Totally. I totally get what you're saying. Now, for everybody in the comments, C. Torres, Carter Comics, thank you. Isom Islands, we'll get to you in a second, buddy. It was Retro that Jeff was thinking about, not Rare.
Retro was out there.
All right. So, but for E3, just to give a little perspective for everybody. E3, huge video game industry event. Everybody who's anybody is there. It's at the time it was not open to the public, right? For Red Dead, or was it? Because it was just switching over around that period somewhere.
You're right. I'm pretty sure it felt manageable. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't feel like, or it was a certain day. I think they opened it to the general public like on the Sunday. So like Friday, Saturday, I think we got to roll around and kind of breathe. You know, the lines weren't too crazy. We didn't have to wait around the block to get into a Nintendo showcase or something, or, you know, slap hands and listen to Shigeru Miyamoto or something like that. Right. From what I recall.
Yeah, and it had a different vibe when you're dealing with just industry. Yes. And the thing about it was, you know, Rockstar was kind of, and still is, kind of mysterious to people. You know, from the outside looking in, like, what are you guys doing? What are your, you know, what's going on behind those closed doors? And, you know, they would release special products like those T-shirts, and people would be like, oh, that dude's from Rockstar. Oh, he's got a Red Dead shirt on. I haven't been able to get much information on it.
Yes.
So now we're walking around with these shirts, the swag and everything, and a special closed off booth that nobody could really access, you know, freely. And it's like, that's what gave it that kind of vibe. And I just wanted to kind of set that stage for you.
Yeah. It's true, right? Like, you know, picture walking around in the Matrix and a bunch of Agent Smiths with their little like badges turned around so you can't tell that they're press, right? Because normally you want to go up in there, it's all family, it's all fellow developers. Like, yo, show me what you're working on. Hey, come over to my booth. Let me show you what we're working on, right? The Take-Two booth was pretty prominent at the time. I forget if it was like Mafia 1 or Mafia 2 out there at the time. I want to say probably Mafia 1. And they decked it out. A lot of people dressed up. Makes you feel like you're in the game. Each little booth feels like its own little town or own little city. You know what I'm saying? It's like Disneyland for adults kind of thing, or for gamers. So let's just call it, game consumers, right? I think now it's grown so much. You know what I'm saying? It's not just people playing games. It's people streaming. You got pro athletes. You know what I'm saying? You got e-athletes. It's a whole different world.
So now that you're at E3, you're kind of in the mix now. Now I want to take a moment to back it up just a second and say, all right, because you mentioned this in a previous post. You said, you're out there, you're living your dreams. How did you take your dreams from your roots with being in NYC? Oh, and I saw the flag there too. You got the Dominican flag there, and you also at one point posted up a yellow, blue, and red flag. I believe that's Ecuador.
Okay.
In one of your reels you posted, and it had the
So that's shout out. Probably that was shouting out the homie Juan Vaca, who came onto the podcast, and so he reps.
Oh, okay.
He reps those beautiful Latin American countries for sure. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's all family. You know what I'm saying? Right. We all brown people, and mom and pop are immigrants from the Dominican Republic, right? So that's kind of as far back as I can trace my lineage, right? To plátanos and rice and beans and good old goat meat and bomb ass bachata and merengue.
Yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm. And we can talk. I totally forgot about that angle. The bachata, the merengue. All right. Word. So you're doing your thing in NYC.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you say, I'm doing this games thing and I'm going to make it happen? How does that spark transfer? Because it's still kind of an enigmatic thing to a lot of people, you know, how you make that jump. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but how'd you do it?
100%, right? You're playing these games. We're both avid gamers. We're consuming the hell out of these, right? I started from 8-bit NES days and moved on up, right? I still have all my consoles, you know, NES, Super Nintendo, N64, all of those, consuming the hell out of them. And again, going back to EGM and GamePro, this is what I knew, right? Whatever I was seeing on TV, right, was kind of hip hop and basketball and Hollywood, right? So it's like, all right, this is one outlet, you know what I'm saying, of people rising to prominence, making money. There's the white collar, my mom's always telling me, we want you to be a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, right? Like, go make that money, right? We snuck into the country so that you can have a better life than us, right? Whatever. And meanwhile, I'm here, eat, sleep, and breathe in video games, right? And comic books. And when I would read these interviews in magazines, all I would see are, the Shigeru Miyamoto's, right? A lot of Japanese developers. There might have been a Romero or a Cliffy B or something like that. And again, very unattainable to me, right? It's like, but in hindsight, it's like, it takes 1 or 2 or 3 people to make a game to put this together. And little by little, I think there was 2 distinct moments, probably 2 or 3. I remember getting my hands on GTA 3 for PC when they finally dropped it for PC and installing it on my old ass Pentium 1 or whatever, barely surviving off the RAM that it had. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they had an instruction book, right? When games used to ship with an instruction book. And, when you are fighting tooth and nail for any new toy or game, you consume the hell out of it from front to back. At least I did, right? I would buy a CD. I'd take the booklet. I read the song credits. I read everybody who's written. I look at the pictures, I consume the hell out of it, right? As if it's like so dear to me. So the same thing for games. And the Rockstar booklet, right? As you know, they put a lot of love into to like packaging their games. It came with the I forgot what they called their virtual New York City.
Liberty City?
Liberty City, yes, thank you. They call it Liberty City. So it came with the map, And, you know, to us, to people, when I say us, I mean people living in New York, it looks straight up like a map of Manhattan. And you got Staten Island down there, you got Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx. So I was like, oh, okay, I like this little virtual portrayal they did. But in the back, they're like, yo, we're looking for testers. And I could swear I was like 15, 16 at the time. And I wrote a handwritten letter. I printed it out, signed it or whatever. You know, I don't know how I sold myself. I wish I could remember. But obviously, this is probably along the lines of like, I love your games. I want to play your games. What I got to do. And they were in New York. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is the only physical entity in the city that I'm living in that can give me can drop kind of the portal into that world. And so that's what kind of drove me to write that letter. Never heard anything back. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm in college, right? Doing like, I don't know, I'm 3 years into a computer engineering degree, struggling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Balancing life and learning my way and finding myself. Learned that I really gravitated towards coding, not so much the hardware aspect and the breadboarding and the physics of all that.
Right.
And again, turn to my, what seemed to feel like the universe is like planned for Diaz, right? Like flipping through the EGM, and in the back of that bad boy, there's an advertisement for Full Sail. And they know how to market, right? You got gamers, you got people playing games. They read these magazines. It's like, hey, learn how to make games at this school.
Tighten up the graphics on level 3.
Yo, is that?
Was that you guys? Or was that somebody else?
No, come on, bro. Full Sail puts people out that can actually do the thing. What is it called? Is it Wood? Is it Evergreen? Westwood. It's like Westwood. That commercial is money, though. Like, tell me now you see that commercial, and if you don't know what it takes to make a game, you're like, oh, shit, I'm going to call that 1-800 number. Like, sign me up. Who has seen that, though? Like, if I was to come to you, you know, how let's say 5 years is the average time to put a game together.
Okay.
And you see these two white boys playing on the TV. It's like Grandma's Boy. It's the people who make Grandma's Boy. It looks the same way. For anybody that needs a visual, 2 kids playing on a controller, some producer comes in, right? Or some producer-like figure, and it tells them, good job, guys. Why don't you tighten up the graphics on level 4? And they turn around, they look to each other, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe we get to do this for work, right? But they're like playing the game, like, just not how you do it. It's so fictional, but it's classic. It works.
Yeah. Okay.
This is why marketing. There's a big disconnect between marketing and like what actually happens, because they are trying to just get eyeballs and get people to click and get people to read and get people to call the number. Yeah, it's rare that they understand what actually goes on into it.
Yeah, I was at 3DO at the time when those things first started popping out, and we thought it was hilarious. And ironically, until I got to Rockstar, I didn't see any actual fruits of the Full Sails. And I do want to make sure I make a distinction between Full Sail and like Westwood or DeVry. Full Sail's in another class, but they had a similar structure, and you saw a lot of the commercials, and a lot of people would get them confused. But
for sure. Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point. It's easy for me to say it was on a different level because I went through. And yeah, DigiPen's another one, right? DigiPen is kind of the West Coast and Full Sail on the East Coast. But now you got programs left, right, and center, right? Every engineering or computer science school has a curriculum dedicated to this art that we call game development, you know? Because it's what the kids want. It's what brings in bodies into the seats. It's what gets tuition dollars, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, so you're at you're doing your computer engineering in New York, but that's not Full Sail, is it?
No. So I'm at a state schools in Long Island, SUNY Stony Brook, and there is a jump that has to be made, right? To be like, flip the table, fuck this, I want to go to Full Sail. Luckily, I had family down there. Okay. And I get into the conversation with my parents who are like, what have you been doing at Stony Brook? You just want to up and transfer and all of a sudden make a shift. And it's that passion. It's just that gut feeling, right? Like it's hard to describe, but it was this light bulb that went off that says, this I need to go check this out. And it's in a place that I'm familiar with. Again, my world map is just the East Coast.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So is this passion, this the spark to do this, is that because of, you're still not seeing a connection with gaming okay.
Yeah.
Because that was me as well, but I never ended up getting to a Full Sail or a DigiPen or anything like that. But I know the disconnect. Okay.
Yeah, I love your route, right? Because you just kind of ripped open some rendering books and started going from like getting 3D models and rendering them by hand, vertice by vertice, right? Like that. Like how you like I couldn't find books, so I'm always amazed when people can like find a book, right? Because before YouTube and everything that's available online, this was the only source of information. If you didn't have a physical mentor or somebody to apprentice underneath, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what? I actually went to Florida State University. I was not a student at Florida State University. I went to Florida State University, and my mother was a library fiend, and she told me that the Florida State University system will actually honor non-student library cards. So if you're not a student, but you had a library card for the state, you could go in and get a book. And I went in there, got a book, and they were like, "Oh, you're not a student here or anything. Hold on a second. There's a little form." So they just sign a little form, like, in case the book gets lost, we know who to find.
It could happen, yeah.
So, but finding that information, getting into that zone, I think that's where me and you connected a lot, because you definitely had that drive and you wanted to get out there. So, okay, now you're out there at Full Sail. How do things change? Are you just on the right path now? What's in your mind?
Yeah, bro. So there's two facets to that, Benja, and there was definitely kind of this world in New York where I was surrounded by friends and family and loved ones, and again finding myself and getting caught up in like getting diverted off the path or finding my path. And so what moving to Orlando allowed me to kind of just like isolate and detach and just be surrounded by family, and allow me to focus solely on the pursuit of what I think is an outlet for me to be doing the thing I want to do, which is be somehow tied into the gaming world. You know what I'm saying? Because back then there was no playing games for money. There was no streaming. There was none of that, right? You have to make the game, and this could be a job for people. And I went to the school. I went to visit family, right? They put me on a tour of the school. They showed me the grounds, right? As you'd imagine, it was everything I needed to see, because they had Mortal Kombat arcades, Street Fighter arcades, virtual tennis arcades, and they had like state-of-the-art computers, and they gave students like what would seem to me at the time to be an unlimited amount of hard drive and RAM and video power and processing power to like run the latest games, which I couldn't even like install on my computer without them blowing up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and then to show me like, hey, look, they would go out of their way to give you a hands-on, like sit in on classes, and they would show you, hey, look, this is code. And when I press run, it's going to launch this 3D application, and then you move a character around and you interact, and this is how you do it, right? So I had seen code. I had an understanding and a passion for coding, right? I love the low barrier of entry of just typing text in a notepad logically, writing instructions, and making things happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't an artist, and I had a much more kind of mathematical mind, right? Like I dig more objectivity at the time, right? Like I wasn't the best debater or critical thinker, but I was damn good at taking a rule set and applying it to get a result, right? So he made that connection for me, right? Code equals game. You can make games here. We're going to show you how to get this by the time you're out of here. And, you know, financial aid and making an investment in myself and having family believe in me. They'd be like, hey, you're going to, my aunt and uncle put me up, saved me from having to pay rent. I'm in Full Sail now. I'm at the place where I think they're going to give me the tools of the trade to do the thing. It's all up to me now to consume it and absorb it. And they did, bro. They did 100%. Like I'm in class with like 80 people of similar passion, right? Hey, we play the shit out of games. We're here to make games. They thought they were there to make games.
Okay.
Because after the first handful of classes where you go through like paper design, then you start getting into like math and programming, half of those people got weeded out, right? They didn't have the same critical thinking that it took. But me, I gravitated towards that, man. Until month after month, they're just drilling you with, logic, C++. And we go from, as you imagine, right? We're making super simple, basic text games. Like here's a C character, and you press left, right, up, and down, and it moves. And when it collides with another thing, things happen, right? The super basic, but to this day, a lot of games are built off the same logic parameters. You know what I'm saying? They just have art and a million, like 100-man army, 100-person army of artists and animators and VFX people and audio people, and to make it look pretty. But the logic is the same. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. And I like what you said about it. It kind of weeded people out. Now, when did you get on the math and coding kind of kick? Did that happen when you were in college in New York, or sometime before? Were there bits of it?
Yeah, it's funny. Math just made sense to me, right? Like English wasn't my first language, but mathematics doesn't have a language. You know what I'm saying? Numbers are the same, however, which way you move them or put them next to each other and do an operation on them. And, I had a good inclination. I don't know if that's a word, inclination to math.
We'll use it.
Let's go with it. So I had seen calculus and all the levels of trig and, algebra before I got to college. So when I got to college, it was kind of easy. And then coming into a game school, that it was finally, for the first time, applying geometry in a way that makes sense and sparks excitement. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a character, my target is over there, I'm aiming at it, right? The camera's pointing this way. How do I find that angle? Oh, hypotenuse, bro, SOHCAHTOA. Like, finally, I'm like, oh my God, I get to use this in a way that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's a very weird revelation. I know what you mean. Where you're sitting down and you're like, hey, wait a minute. Can't we use a Carnot map to see if these plots are going to line up and we're going to have all, like, I was big on discrete mathematics. I was like, this stuff is crazy when I started using it in actual games, so I know what you mean with the math and the logic. It's really weird how that connects and just kind of lights up.
Bro, it's beautiful, man. Because before then, it was like, what application do I have for this? Maybe I can be an architect, right? That was another avenue that maybe I was entertaining, of how do I apply the things I'm actually good at to the real world, right? Because up until then, all people would tell me is like, oh yeah, you're good at math. You'll probably make a good engineer. I was like, okay, I guess, I think. So I want to tell people that if you're good at math, you can make games. You can be a gameplay programmer, man. Like, they love you. You can be a rendering programmer. They need people like that. You started out, you were doing gameplay code when you first broke in.
Yeah, I started out doing gameplay code with Howard Scott Warsaw. He as my director. I told you that story on the Autoplay Area podcast. You guys check that out later. We'll link it up and get to that in a minute.
What was the name of that book? Cracking College?
Conquering College.
Conquering College.
It was.
I wish I read that.
It was some of the funniest shit. I mean, it was like, they're like, hey, even if you don't have a question after class, make sure you show up after class like 3 or 4 times, every month to make sure that the teacher understands. I'm like, all right, sure, whatever. And what's funny is, even as a game developer, I started doing some of the Conquering College techniques. Like, I'd walk into the producer's office and be like, hey, man, we're doing this, this, and this, and this. And, it's just techniques about how to get through a large system.
Life skills, man.
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had I had Howard, and I was doing that thing as a gameplay programmer. And for people who don't know what a quote unquote gameplay programmer is, I was just moving around all the logic to make sure the score was correct, the proper number of characters were on screen, that everything was getting garbage collected.
Oh God.
That means if something was off screen or needed to be deleted from the memory, that it wouldn't like blow up your RAM or anything like that. Keeping track of loading. If we were coming to the end of a level, I needed to start this whole load out process and load in the next level process, which was a whole process of its own.
Yeah.
So just making sure everything kind of worked. And that also got me into working with the controller, which was really interesting to me.
Input handling.
Yeah. So something you never think of where, there's like a separate input chip on and you're like, oh, I can access this thing separately from the rest of and it's like, yeah, you can try out whatever you want. It's not going to affect the graphic speed, and just really weird stuff that you could start playing around with. So that's where I started. But when you so you went to Full Sail, you did your thing. How easy was it for you to jump from, hey, I went to this video game school to, hey, I have a video game job? How did that work?
Yeah, sure. So by the time you get out of there, right, we're essentially pretty decent programmers, right? We can jump into any aspect of a game stack, from networking, rendering, anything of this. We can come in and hold our own to at least partner with a senior or something like that. So I came out of school just looking at programming jobs, just applying left, right, and center for anything and everything that says program, so that includes Microsoft and all those guys.
Real quick, did you have a focus?
I really took to tools programming. You know what I'm saying? So like, I really enjoyed making my own application and hooking into organizing assets or spitting them out in a way that was friendly to whatever schema you wanted or something like that, right? Like, I guess what you call now like a UX or UI designer or programmer, right? I really took a liking to some of that stuff. Obviously, gameplay programming and even a little bit of AI. Really dug AI in school, right? Like pathfinding and optimizing the way that something can get to you or something. So that's what but funny enough, when Midway would kind of go recruit from Full Sail, a few other companies had the kind of same thing, right? They had a few, I guess, employees that were on the board of the curriculum, right? And so they had a hand in affecting what the kids are learning so that you can help them build and solve their problems, right? So Midway would come and recruit, and they had a pretty good success rate, right? They would kind of find one or two people every time they came. And I was essentially like number 10 or something like that when they came back around. I was put in contact through my career dev. I want to shout him out, Rob Coble. For some random reason, he took a liking to me and worked with me, doing all the usual, like, hey, give me your resume. I'll help you tighten it up. I'll put it in front of these people. I think, a little bit of self-awareness looking back is in a group of programmers and let's call a spade, socially awkward mofos. I stood out because I had somewhat I was somewhat capable of speaking to someone and having a conversation on not just like, what you're doing in code and how does that thing work and shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think this is what he gravitated towards. Like, hey, you could be a good designer. I didn't know what that was, right? I didn't know that was a thing. And so on the interview process, we're talking very little about code, and we're talking a whole lot about pop culture and game feel and the way the world works. Like design for me an elevator system, and I'm like, I can break that down logically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would put the floors in an array, and then, you know, I would put your input, you know, whatever floor you press in a separate, and I would compare and, you know, do some like some binary sorting or some shit like that, and figure out peak time, right? You're coming into a building, you know, then you probably want to send more elevators up. You know, you leave in the building at the end of the day, you probably want to have more elevators going down, shit like that.
Yeah.
But I love these conversations, Benja, because it was straight up the shit that I didn't have to go to school for. It was the shit that I knew growing up and the conversations I was having over the cafeteria table with the homies. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, why is Batman a compelling character, right? Like, why is he cooler than a Captain America, for instance, right? These are the things that designers kind of obsess over because you got to make a mass market selling product, for example.
Yeah. Did that feel like I don't want to say a slight, but how did that take you? I mean, how did you take that where it's like, hey, you might be a designer. Mm-hmm. Did you feel like, well, no, I want to keep doing this programming thing, or let me see what it's about? How did you take it?
I'll tell you how I took it. It was like, hey, we want to give you a job in games. I says, yes, sign me the hell up. I don't care what you got me doing. I'm going to fake the funk. I'm going to fake it till I make it. And I'm going to do whatever the hell you want me to do. Because I think by this point, I've touched a little bit of, I've done a little bit of modeling. I've done a little bit of level layout, done a whole bunch of coding, done a little bit of paper design. You know, like I can float for at least 10 seconds, right? Enough to get me through to learn more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because with me, it's funny. And I asked that because, you're never quite sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially coming out of college, you've got your own ideas. You've been building these things for so long. But then you get out into, quote unquote, the real world. And you're not sure how people are reading what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when I got to 3DO, I remember people were thinking, I don't know if I mentioned this, but people were like, hey, are you an artist? And I was like, nah, bro. You know, oh, okay, you're a programmer. I mean, are you a designer? It's like, no. So, okay, so you're in QA. And I'm like, no, I'm a programmer. And they were like, oh. And they were all kind of like, oh, I'm a programmer. I didn't know that.
There's a prestige to programming.
Yeah, there's a prestige. And, dude, I was coming out of college. And in college, I was trying to be, fresh for the ladies. I was doing college parties and stuff. I was having fun out there. So that vibe totally came into the workplace. I remember, just having this crazy outfit on. I mean, crazy slick. It wasn't like...
Yes, fashionable.
Yes, it was very fashionable. Crisp, he'll figure it out. It was badass outfit. And I just remember that was the thing I was wearing when I was talking to this guy. And I realized, like, yo, I don't really fit with any of these programmers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so they're getting a whole different read on me, and I'm putting some energy out there that they don't understand. Because I would, instead of saying like, hey, this is a great programming obstacle, I saw like, well, hey, why are we doing this in the first place? If we're going to have all these characters, why don't we make our character select screen do this and this and this? Mm-hmm. And it was just like, they look at me like, what does that have to do with, loading in these high-res models? And I'm like, yeah, we don't want to load in the high-res models because we need a character select screen that does this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I found myself going to lunch with the designers and hanging with the artists and all that. So that was weird for me when I first got in. But then, later on, I kind of figured out my zone. Mm-hmm. So, you kind of, so I'm guessing with your zone, you kind of got in there and started off the ground running. I'm not actually sure what you did at Midway either.
Yeah, so they called us game designers, but it was very similar to what we were doing at Rockstar under the design label. You know what I'm saying? We are scripting encounters and systems and controlling what spawns and what loads and what, calculating damage and cleaning up and unlocking achievements, right? Like all that, like kind of low level gameplay logic, right? We're in charge of that, and that's what kind of stuck, right? Because it was an easy application of the coding brain that was kind of like, that I was that I was washed over with. I'm saying, like, okay, this is how I solve problems now. There's one way to solve a problem, right? You break that shit down analytically and categorize it and structure it and kind of break it down that way. And so they called designers that, but I always felt like at Rockstar, we're more like gameplay programmers, really, the way we operated. You know what I'm saying? We just had a little bit more creative freedom, which I loved. Rockstar was like such a wonderful opportunity to marry a little bit of the best of both worlds. You know what I'm saying? And midway too, I wanted to touch on the crazy birth of design, because back in the day, right, if you go to something like Pong, and I think his name was like Al Acorn or something like that, Alan Alcorn, but like there's one guy who programmed the two paddles and the ball physics, right, going back and forth and upping your score when it passes the edge of the screen. You know what I'm saying? And so he's credited as being the engineer and the designer, but he's really a coder. You know what I'm saying? And then you take that one step further and you bring your artists in, right? And you can take that super far and make one paddle Serena Williams and the other paddle Venus Williams, right? And all of a sudden you got tennis, you know what I'm saying? So now the aesthetics take a whole nother level because you have a 3D artist adding that aesthetic layer to it. And so all you need is an engineer and an artist. And sometimes they would kind of cross-pollinate it or cross that little design realm, but you didn't really need it. You know what I'm saying? The designers make a rule set, and that's how the game operates. Down the line over the years, that design specialty or discipline was born, you know what I'm saying, where it wasn't someone who was engineering focused and it wasn't someone who was like art focused. There was someone who lived somewhere in between that lived in the nuts and bolts of the rule set or what the player motivation. You know what I'm saying? These are things that were kind of secondary to, like, it's got to look good. If the product doesn't look good, nobody's going to give a shit. And the engineers focus on, like, well, it's got to work. If the thing crashes, it doesn't load, it brings on your computer, nobody's going to give a shit, right? The designer kind of came in and got to live in that space of, like, well, where can we take this that hasn't been explored already, right? What motivations can we provide for you? What stories can we tell? What experiences can we create? So it's interesting how design tends to be this nebulous realm of, like, oh, you're a level designer. Not really. Oh, you're a writer. You're a narrative person. I mean, I could do it, but that's not really what compels me. Oh, then you're like a systems designer. It's like, yeah, you're getting closer, getting hotter. So the bucket has blown up, right? There's UI, UX. There's a whole bunch of derivatives of design. I myself love that little in between engineering and design, right? That little branch in between, because, you know, your roots are always going to kind of claw out. And so that's where you find kind of that technical design layer, as I like to call it.
So you did some heavy work with Amazon's Lumberyard. Saw you out there doing there's a picture of you on when I dropped the picture, say you have the picture of you doing the demo, and now you're off at EA doing technical design there as well. So what does they're technical designers, and I kind of know what those are, and like, I'm just speaking from a regular person's point of view who's not in the game industry. I kind of get what a technical designer is, but there's still this idea out there of, I want to design games, and you know, they think that's like a movie director or George Lucas or whatever of the games. Does that still exist, or has that ever existed?
Word. I mean, like, you know, if you want to go to the OG of the discipline, I think, again, they always derive from, I either drew the thing or I coded the thing. But I
So
can credit
art or engineering. Okay.
I can credit Shigeru Miyamoto, you know, the father of all those Nintendo games and Mario and Donkey Kong and Zelda. Because I think he lived in that space of the dream world of like, I have an idea or I've done something in my real life that now I want to simulate for people around the world to experience, right? Like being a little plumber, jumping and climbing down pipes and jumping on things as an obstacle to the player. And Zelda being kind of the original open world game, right? So does the role of being a director exist for people who say they want to make games, right? Coming off from paper, I have an idea, right? I think you and I have run into that. Jeff spoke very adamantly about this in a conversation he and I had on his episode of Autoplay Area. Yeah. That, you know, ideas are cheap. Everybody has ideas. You're not paid to be an idea person. A designer is not an idea person. A designer, in my personal interpretation of a designer, is a liaison or a bridge builder. I just came up with that right now. Like, I've never used it to describe the craft, but I want to call them a bridge builder.
Okay.
Because
bridge builder.
They live in the center of the universe between all those other disciplines that go into making a game. Because you can make the art, right? Things for people to look at. And you can code an interactive experience, right? When I press controls, things happen. And the designer gives a place for all those things to kind of come together at an intersection. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. And I want to help. I'm going to offer my little clarification, not a clarification, because what you said is correct.
Well, I definitely want to hear how you perceive the craft as well.
So you know, coming in, I'm thinking of the nearest model, which is movies. And when I think of movies, I realized, and I had long discussions about this with AJ Shaw. We mentioned AJ, I think, at some point from Rockstar before you got there. The wild and crazy AJ. But we had this discussion about video game design versus movie development. And with the movie, you have this guy called a line producer. Okay. And the line producer basically says, okay, here's the script. And here are all the pieces of the puzzle. You know, we have to have actors, we have to have lighting, we have to have locations, we have to have permits, we have to have equipment, we have to have costume. He goes through all of this stuff, and you know, and that person lines up everything. You know, the line producer's job is basically to script out the entire development of this process. And of course, there are things that don't happen along the way or do happen, but it's a relatively linear and understood process. Mm-hmm. So
we've had a couple hundred years of doing it, right? To kind of figure out a nice pipeline.
Exactly. So you can apply it to stage plays. You can apply it to, you know, street performance or whatever. You get in, you have your lines, you kind of do your thing, and everything goes according to this plan by the line producer. In fact, the line producer, you know, everything is supposed to be like an assembly line. That's where they get the name from. Mm-hmm. I didn't know this thing existed until I went to a screenwriters conference. Okay. But now that you've got everything lined up, you can just develop it. And it's not that way with games, because there's always this, you know, well, how does this even work? We have a new controller we're trying out, and it's so much more fluid and, you know, just things happen by chance. You're still learning. It's true. You know, so, you know, you could add a level, you could remove a level, you can add characters, take away characters. And yes, you do that in movies, but it's much less there's much less variability in there.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of it's the opposite end of the spectrum of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like they start from the script, and then they kind of work down the line, with like getting your executive team or your director, then getting your cast, then doing, you got storyboards, right? Like it's very rare a surprise in the middle of a movie production. I think I've never been in one. I think the odds are very low that there's a surprise addition.
Well, they don't like surprises. So
yeah,
the only surprises come around if like this actor broke his leg.
Yes.
We got the
which is a known risk, right?
Yeah, we got the rights to get somebody on that wasn't available before. There are different ways of changing a movie around or a Hollywood production around as you go, but it always seemed to me to be a little more static than what we dealt with in games, where it was more like, well, of course we could switch out the main character with the side character in terms of the physical 3D model. You don't do that with actors so much. Like you don't just switch out stuff right off the bat.
CG them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really quickly, I want to make sure I hit a few of these people that. How are we on time with you, by the way?
How much time we trying to hit?
It's on you.
I can hang out for a little bit.
All right, we'll say a half hour.
Yeah.
All right. So really quick before I jump back into that, A Tribe Called Mel asks, do you think UX are true designers? The UX guys.
Yeah. Experience design is for sure a big deal, for sure these days. Like, I mean, they can be applied in a lot of different avenues, right? Like, hey, I have an app and I need to control how many clicks it takes to get to a place. In the game area, these are definitely the people that are doing a lot of the work. Now that games are super complex, right? There's a million things you could do on the controller and only so many buttons. They're the people playing a critical role of bringing in players off the street, from wherever, watching them, studying them, recording them, and bringing the developers back that information to be like, ooh, there's some friction here, right? This doesn't make sense to a good percentage of players. Let's revisit that, right? So they are a super critical part of design for sure. It's more feel, experience design is definitely a lot of feel, but a lot of analytics goes into it.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think so too. And the reason her question caught me was that with
it's
UX, with UX design, there's so much interaction. There's so much interactivity. How does that mesh with the feel? You know what I mean? How the actual game feels. And as we're talking about, there is no. And this is my perspective we're getting into. I'm not saying this as a declarative across the board, but there isn't that person that says, I am the designer. You kind of have this vibe that's like, hey, this person's developing the user interface. He needs to talk with the sound guy. The sound guy is doing things a certain way, and that person needs to talk with whoever is getting all of the characters' voices recorded,
Yeah.
So you have this whole design thing that's kind of just spread out amongst a lot of people. And I think that's where the director / producer comes in to kind of make sure that everything is not going off the rails.
Yeah, keep everything kind of moving forward to in line of the original vision.
Right. So that's how I kind of see it. And I don't know if I ever told you, but I was actually told one time by somebody that I was going to be the last lead designer at Rockstar. That they would never.
Is that because you fucked it up? Because
God,
like, yo, Ben kind of closed the door for the rest of people behind him, man. Or yeah, I'm curious because I think yeah, there's two ends of the spectrum, right? There's the person who has the vision and the will and the charisma to rally an entire production on his or her shoulders so that we never deviate too far off the path and get that thing delivered. And then there's the other end of the spectrum that is really great at running the madness in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? And knows his chefs and the entire team and what they're good at, and changing the recipe and adding some spice here or there, moving it around, or knowing when you got to toss that and start again, kind of thing.
I think that's, and exactly. And this is where I started getting on my game design is dead platform. You know, I wasn't knocking that games have no design or whatever, but that idea that I had held on to, you know, was kind of fading away, where it's becoming more of a team effort to produce this quote unquote game from a design point of view.
Yeah.
So you do have your, once in a while, you still have your Cliffy B's, you'll have your, you know, Minecraft, which is basically a solo operation. You know, you have your, you know, Cory Barlog from the God of War
Santa
series.
Monica,
Yeah, they brought him back in just to do that thing because they couldn't corral all those ideas. And let me not knock them like that. I shouldn't say they couldn't corral all those ideas, but there were too many ideas going around, and he was the guy to come in and corral them all together.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm with you on that vibe, to say a creative director in games tends to be more of a corraler these days than the other end of the spectrum, where it's like, I got the vision. It's all in my head. I'm going to show you the way.
Now, do you think that's good or bad? Or do you have a preference for either style?
I've worked in both, right? And I hate to use this, but it feels like when you have that sole single-threaded owner, things get done. You know what I'm saying? There's very little deviation unless it's an absolute mess, but things get done and quickly kind of shifted or changed. And in the other realm, there's a lot more fuzziness and dancing and people kind of falling, you know.
You said dancing. Look what I made. Let's dance.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to both, man. And they definitely both still exist. And I think these days, if you're in the kind of the freelance circuit, or you're doing the interview dance, it's up to you to pick. You know which one brings out the best in you, your best creative source, right? As a designer, as an artist, you usually want room to flex a little bit, right? You want a little bit of ownership. You want to work with someone that you know is going to take your ideas, gel with them, kind of bake them a little bit, marinate them, kind of bring you to a new level. So I know who I would work for, right? I would work for what's the main head of the kitchen usually called? It's
the sous chef.
Is it the sous chef is a dude, cutting and chopping onions and stuff like that, right? He's working the tools, but there's like the head. There's like the head chef, bro. Like if
I forgot the name for him.
Yeah, if we go to Ratatouille, it's the little small dude running the kitchen and making the calls over like who's in there, who's not in there.
What's the show with Gordon Ramsay? Kitchen Nightmares, Hell's Kitchen, or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a top chef, and there was a chopped.
Yeah. But he's the guy who's always yelling, about you didn't season it. How dare you do this to the filet mignon? What are you thinking? Shrimp should be cared for in this way.
Yup. Those are creative discussions, man.
That's the tyrant one. Was there a special name for head chef? Happy accident. That's what we're looking for. Was there a special name for head chef?
Yeah.
But with Oh, by the way, if you haven't watched How to Be a Tyrant, this may be a time to write that down.
Writing it down.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. How to Be a Tyrant. It takes a weird look at these very controlling figures. Obviously, tyrants, right?
I saw. I think it has like Hitler on the cover or something.
Yeah, Hitler, Idi Amin, Mussolini in there. and it just talks about their personalities, and I don't want to say glorifies them, but it's kind of like, hey man, dude got shit done. And,
Yeah.
so it's kind of got that vibe about it. And I think about that a lot in development circles, how, yes, it's good to have everybody's input, but sometimes when someone comes in and just gets something done,
Yes.
same thing with, Gordon Ramsay and being a tough chef. In fact, I tried bringing that example up one time at a game development studio. I was like, guys, we're kind of all over the place.
Yes.
I'm going to send out an episode of, link to an episode of this show. This is our problem right here. And
I love that.
The restaurant was this is why they didn't like me as a designer, because, everybody's like, we're doing a good job. And I would stand up, no, I'm fucked up. We're all fucked up. Let's fix this. And they'd get mad at me. But I sent out this link, and they watched the video, and they were like, are you saying we're out of control and you're going to yell at us? I'm like, no, I'm not going to yell at you, but somebody needs to. Yeah. So that was basically
yelling Jeff up in there.
Oh.
I hear that, man. I hear that. Like, it's interesting too, right now that these companies are getting bigger and bigger and getting satellite sister studios in different countries, right? With tax havens and all this thing. Cultures are super interesting, man. Like, can you imagine being in one place, operating how we do in Southern California, and then having to connect with people in Canada, either Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal, and then having to work with people from the UK and Swedish people from Stockholm, right, who have very different sensibilities, and the way you and I speak to each other very endearingly, very straightforward, matter-of-factly. You try speaking like that to someone from a different culture and country, and that shit is hardcore lost in translation. You know what I'm saying? And it's misinterpreted easily, man. So there's definitely a new layer of, we throw the word empathy around a lot.
Sure.
And you can give the visual of putting the kid gloves on and the mittens so that you don't break someone who's very thin-skinned when you're handling them. Mm-hmm. And so the new generation of developers is coming up underneath that as well, where it's like very close to their art and their craft, and don't handle feedback or criticism necessarily well,
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I came up as a not afraid of anybody. I was a small kid, actually. I came up as a small black kid who wasn't afraid of anybody in the North Florida, South Georgia region, where Southern Baptist ideals ruled, right?
Yeah.
So, and my dad was from Mississippi, my mother was from New Orleans, and they moved to this Southern Baptist place. And it was, so they were like, hey, do what you got to do. Mm-hmm. And, if an obstacle comes in the way, you got to find a way to go through it, go around it, get it moved out of the way, phase through it, whatever. They were just like,
phase through a shadow cat through that sucker.
Yeah, pull a flash and just kind of zoom through the thing. They were basically just like, you have to go through stuff to get to where you need to be. You don't have to hurt anybody. You don't have to do it, but you have to be kind of a hard ass. And so that's what I grew up with, right? Mm-hmm. And I know people from New York, and you've got a variety of experiences. You have a little bit of that, oh, I get it. There's a harder edge to life.
Yeah.
So now, and I really don't want to, because there's a lot of good that's coming out of this empathy, a ton of good.
We're better now than we were back then, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to minimize that at all, but I don't have the proper sensitivity a lot of times to be able to say, listen, you can push through this, or you can find a way to make it happen, or you can stand your ground. you can, and it becomes extremely difficult. Like,
Yeah.
I got in trouble once for having an argument with another old schooler, and it made somebody else who was completely
uncomfortable.
Yeah, who was completely detached from our situation uncomfortable. So it was kind of like I stood up and was like, "Hey, this is here. It shouldn't be there. Why don't we change this to that and this?" And it's like, you need to mind your business because this and that and that. I'm like, dog, it's doing this. It's broken. It's effed up. And it's probably going to cause problems for these. And we got into to me, it was very factual.
Yeah.
Just get the facts and information out. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And a little while later, I get pulled into an office like,
to close the door. You know you fucked up when they're closing the door.
Yeah. Somebody said to me, we got a report back about your behavior, and you said something that you shouldn't have said, and we don't want you to speak that way anymore. And I was like, well, what was it I said? And they were like,
yeah,
if we told you, it may implicate the person who brought us this information. So watch yourself. I was like, what? This is me coming from I was in my development mode, just like, bang stuff out, keep going.
Yeah. And
so I'm like, okay. Now I have to realize that, it's a different vibe now. We're not individual members all pushing forward. We're kind of a team, and whatever I do has more of an effect on people around me. So I don't know. You're a game, maybe a game generation down from me, in part of the newer. So you're a little closer to that than I am. What's it like out there now? And I'm definitely out of games, so I don't have that fresh perspective.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Like having come up in the, people get passionate. They want to throw fists. You throw fists, and there's respect and love the next day because you're just motivated by getting the best thing out there to the millions and millions of people around the world chanting his name. But in today's day and age, for sure, there's a lot of learning, and I'm loving it because what was lacking back when we were coming up is there was no training. There was nobody telling you how to deal with different personality types and different people, right? Everybody had one algorithm that they applied that worked for them, and nobody had checked them. So they just kind of run everybody through the same while loop. You know what I'm saying?
Do until
pulled into office, door closed, and checked.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so what I'm loving about today, right, and kind of gives me hope that I can keep doing this for a little while longer, is you got a lot of training and seminars and experts coming in. A lot of, it comes a lot from psychology and sociology, and a lot of research, and they're coming in, man, and they're breaking down, like, look at what happens when you positively encourage someone. Look at what happens when you negatively put down someone's work consistently, right? And you see the little trend lines, and it's like, oh, okay, we should all love each other and hug each other and stuff like that. But really, I think the missing ground that I see, Benja, is people are very good about complaining after the fact. And you for sure, there's a processing time, right? Like a lot of time when you're in the heat of it, there's like a shock factor. They'd be like, oh, I just got disrespected, and then you unpack that on your own. But I think we're all learning to be a little better communicators. And okay. Matter of fact, hold on. Let me take a step back.
All right.
Let me take a step back, man. There's this whole mental health movement, and hey, getting a counselor and speaking to a therapist is an okay thing. It's a great thing. We can all benefit from that. Because I think a lot of us hold things to the chest and then take it out somewhere and misappropriate it, and it manifests itself in some negative explosion, right? That then you got to get called into an office about. So I think in this day and age, we're having these deeper discussions with ourselves, with friends, with peers on social media, with therapists or whatever, and you're learning your triggers. And so you can kind of catch yourself when you're in the heat of the moment, and you can convey that in the middle of a heated discussion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, yo,
yeah.
I'm hot right now, but it's because I really want this feature to shine, not because I don't like your idea, right? And oh, you know what, dude? I'm hot right now too, but thank you for elaborating on that. That helps bring my trigger and my self-defense mechanism down a bit. Let's keep going. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I think that's where a lot of learning is happening, and we kind of get to serve as role models for this new generation. Like you said, the little odd bystander that sees two people having a heated discussion and is like, oh, I feel for this guy. I'm going to go complain about it because he made me uncomfortable, right? It's like, well, first, I naturally want to say mind your own fucking business, but what I'd much rather have them have seen is two people communicating the whole journey of the emotions and the idea and the facts, and then that person kind of being able to see that, oh, you know, they're going through the whole dance of a conversation and getting their thoughts out there, right? Like,
yeah,
and experiencing that. I think you see a lot more meetings these days where you get all these different personality types, especially on Zoom. You know what I'm saying? Like, where only one person can speak at a time. That helps a lot. You get to watch people's behavior and see when they kind of take something to the heart, and you get to ask them to be like, yo, how did that land for you, bro?
Yeah.
I didn't mean it this way. Let's make sure that we are all on the same page, kind of thing. So there's a really cool evolution that's happening. And there's definitely been a lot of uncomfort for me, and I have to resist on a lot of my natural urges. Yeah. But I'm really loving who I'm becoming on the other end of this journey as a result of dealing with this new wave of sensitive, tissue papered people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's, you know what? And I totally agree, man. I'm there with you. And I'm willing to take it. I'm willing to learn, because I think that that softer side, you know, I rock with the you know, kind of a gentle demeanor a lot of times, and I get that. Yeah. But then people get really surprised when I, you know, go in on something. But, you know, I'm like, okay, that's just how I am. Sorry, I wasn't even thinking about your ass before. Now we have to go in though.
People always think it's about them, man. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with you. Take your ego out of it. Let this man shine his passion. That's why I dig your creative vibe, Benja, 100%, because I know it's going to be like no holds barred, no prisoners taken. You're going to get your thing out there. And I naturally gravitate towards that, right? That's what I grew up around. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Nobody's apologizing for pushing their vision or idea. You know what I'm saying? We're used to, in the hood, I mean, where I grew up in New York City, in Spanish Harlem, we're used to a lot of like that. Sometimes loudest voice gets the head start, but eventually everybody goes around in the cipher, right? In their own little way, everybody gets a turn to bring what they can bring to the table eventually. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, to that point, we've, you know, I don't want to leave this saying that, you know, we should all just be hard asses, because what we're doing now is cutting off of a lot of the bad edges. We're pushing out a lot of the, because you and I've never had a thought in my head that says, you know, John Diaz is passionate, but he's really a problem. I don't know anyone that's known me that's for any, you know, length of time that said, you know, well, he's really a toxic person and a bad individual. I'd hope that somebody would pull me across and say, hey, now you're getting into toxic zone, you know, instead of just being passionate. But I accept it, because now a lot of bullshit is coming to light that, you know, I could say something in a certain situation, but then I hear about all these stories and I'm like, whoa, that's what went down between you and that group? Or, oh, that's why they decided to change the project, was to fire these 7 guys. Wow, that's interesting. You know, so I'm hearing all this stuff, and you know, for somebody who's used to being in the trenches fighting in a certain way, you know, I mean, you remember me at work. We said it at the beginning of the podcast. You know, I don't give a shit. You know, that's how I kind of roll. But you know, I don't want to gloss over like what's happening at Activision Blizzard now.
Serious.
You know, there are enough. I don't want to say pockets, but there are enough stains throughout the industry where it's necessary to bring that to light and say, you know what, this is why we need this empathy. This is why we need to have these better discussions. So I'm going to try to be a hard ass, as I always have been, but you know, I want to be sure I'm coming across as like, hey, are we doing this right? Are we having the proper discussions?
Yeah, dude, I love that, because I think the what makes a team thrive is to make sure that everybody feels that their voice is heard. You know what I'm saying? So when you see the thing that's going on at Blizzard, it's because people spoke up and nothing resulted, and the things kept going on, right? So, and then people think that, oh, I can't speak up because nothing happens, right? So knowing that you're heard is a big piece of that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like to know that I can come to Benja and I can express to you my interpretation or my feedback on an idea or a concept or a piece of art, and to feel like he heard me. That is all I need. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is all I need. When someone feels like their voice isn't heard on a project, on a creative project, on a team, where it's like, yo, we're all working towards the same end result. When you keep getting your voice kind of trampled and disregarded, that's when you need to bounce. A, you need to get the hell out of there and go somewhere else. But B, you know, it tends to kind of come back at you in our egotistical selves, right? To be like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Can I be better? Or I suck, whatever like that, right? And you never want that, right? As a teammate, you want your teammates to be operating at their 150% maximum power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun to run at that speed. You know, it's fun to redline. I was talking to Jeff about the runner's high, and I was like, when you get in that mode, it's like, you know, you're in there, it's passionate. So I want to run fast. I want the person next to me to run fast. You know, I don't want everything to be in the 35-mile-per-hour zone. You know, let's just, you know,
with speed bumps and shit, man.
Let's find a way to open up the engines and let people cruise or do their thing. You know,
such a good feeling.
So yeah, man. Listen, this has been a great discussion. I don't know if you want to. Is there anything else that you wanted to get out there before we start to?
Benja, thanks for having me on here, man. BenjaCon is amazing. I'm glad to be a part of it this year. I love what you're doing. I love how you create a space and bring people on and get to do the things that we have been detached from or disconnected from, right? Because these things aren't happening. The pandemic's put in, is cock blocking a bunch of these cool things that would bring us together. I got a couple minutes if you wanted to chat about podcasting, man, and that outlet, and how the hell developers or artists or come up with like, hey, let's get on a mic and talk and put it out there. And someone's gonna listen.
That's my rollout note, podcasting. So as you said, you know, I started doing this thing because, and actually Raph, who was in here, I'm not sure if he's still in here, but Raph was in here. He got me started on the podcasting bit.
Shout out to Raph.
Yes.
You were the first podcaster I ever met.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, nice. Man.
Yeah, man. It was a fun time. Stuck with me, and you know, it was just recording conversations that we have already and putting it out there in a way that's beneficial to us and hopefully to the people listening. Yeah. So, you know, now I'm moving this new podcast era for myself into, the ADD experience, art design development. And
Raph is back.
Yes, Raph is in the house. Okay. I didn't want to start hitting buttons and might accidentally close the session or something.
Yeah, me too. I'm like super panicked.
Yeah. So, and Raph will be on later on tonight. Sure to have an awesome discussion with him. Josh, who's also in the comments there talking about passion is loud. That's definitely true. He's coming on Saturday, and that guy, work ethic, getting it and doing stuff will definitely, if you're talking about work ethic and getting through stuff and just, hey, I don't know what that is, but I'm getting in and I'm doing it. That's a guy I wanted to definitely connect with. He's often here too.
Okay.
So we still got good stuff coming. But yeah, it was a whole creative vibe, and I like creating not in a vacuum, but with kind of bouncing things off of people, seeing what they're about. Mm-hmm. So that's the spirit of BenjaCon, and that's why I'm doing this. But you have the Autoplay Area podcast. Tell us what that's about.
Yeah, man. So this podcast came to be as a survival mechanism from a person who have gone a whole year in a pandemic in 2020, starved to connect and talk about game development with people that just wasn't next to me at work, right? Specifically on an engine team or something like that, right? I wanted to talk outside of those confines. And I finally got with an employer, or I knew enough, right? As a creative going into any company, I'd caution you guys to read the fine print or get a lawyer to know what you're signing when you're taking a deal from any place that's willing to give you a bunch of money to own your creative output. Because I found out that was something valuable to me as a result of having worked at Amazon, making YouTube videos for their technology and getting out there as like a public face who can speak on game development, right? To be like, oh shit, I didn't know that this was a thing and there was an appetite for it, and let alone that this is a wonderful creative outlet, for someone who's kind of lived behind the screen, working in virtual worlds, making things happen, and then kind of shooting that off into a world and hearing the feedback on the internet of what people thought, is to be able to kind of connect one-on-one then and there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, you can reach me, you can chat with me, I can connect with you on the fly. I get your feedback live, see what you dig, what you don't dig. And that was a sweet outlet too, man. Like getting in a timeline and chopping and moving things around and telling your own narrative. I love that shit, right? I never got to experience that before. So now coming into my job at EA, that was not going to be an aspect of my work, but I still wanted that outlet. So I negotiated that up front to be like, yo, I want to have public-facing content where I talk about games. How do we make that happen? Where's the happy medium between it, right? And so I signed away my ability to make a game and monetize it or get any money off of this, but it allows me an outlet to talk about game development, keep the skills sharp, keep leveling up, right? Like keep learning what's hot and what's not and where the trends are going from people that I don't work with. And put that out there to kind of give back and leave breadcrumbs for the people coming behind me. You know what I'm saying? Put that hand and reach back for other people who, like us, didn't know that this was a thing you could do for money, right? That don't know even where to start or where to look. And so that's where this podcast came from. Benja was like, I want to keep connecting with people. I want to have a live bridge, and I want to capture these conversations because we know so many amazing creative individuals with unique stories that we're so used to kind of being gag-ordered and you can't talk about it, right? That's the culture that we came from. Yes. So I want to give motherfuckers an outlet to kind of like, yo, it's okay, man. It's okay to come out the cave and tell your story and share your opinions and insight. Honoring your NDA or whatever confidentiality agreements you have. There's so much more that you have to offer on your journey with the world that people want to hear, right? So that's me creating that access point and letting and having fun. And then there's a flip side to that, right? Where I'm becoming a better speaker and presenter, man. Because when you sit hours on end listening to two people converse, and you see the patterns of the ums and the ahs and the and what what I'm saying is, and slowly but surely, that's making me a better orator and a speaker, right? And I get to put that into practice with each interview that I have coming up.
Do you listen to your old interviews?
I do, man. My wife tells me that I have a problem, but I view it as a skill. I think it's a skill to be able to kind of like listen to yourself and watch yourself for hours on end. Yeah. Just with the focus of like tightening it up and cutting it down and shit like that.
So hold on, you have a problem as in like, why are you listening to yourself? Yes. What's wrong with you? Okay.
Yes, exactly. She'll catch me in the car. I have my podcast like jacked up. She's like, "You're fucking listening to yourself again." I was like, "No, babe, I'm consuming my content to know how I can improve it on the next episode."
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I took a I was in a period of taking a lot of personality tests because I was trying to figure out more about my personal energy. Yeah. I was like, okay, normally I wouldn't deal with this kind of thing, but I need to step back and look at my personal energy a little more, right?
Sure.
So I took several personality tests, and one of them, I scored 100 in a certain category, and it was narcissism. And when I scored it, I was like 100? Okay, either this test is incredibly, accurate or a complete load of shit.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, where they have like fuzzy questions. It's like, if you were in a situation where you didn't know how to do anything, would you leave or stay there and do it? And I'm like, stay there and do it. I don't give a shit if I fail or not, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, I kept thinking back to each of those questions, and I'm like, I wonder who wrote this, because, and it's not like I'm always confident that I'll win something, but I'm just like, get in there and do it. If you're on stage, people are laughing, do you keep going and get off stage? Keep going. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Keep going. Finish what you start, man. Finish what you start.
It was just a self-awareness thing, but I thought that was funny. That it got seen as narcissism. But I was just saying that to say, if you got to look at your own stuff, I think you may go outside the bounds of what people think is normal, but
yes,
it helps, go back, watch the tapes, listen to what you're saying. And I'm just trying to get better by, repetition and some of this stuff. So we'll see what happens.
100%, man. It's kind of a cheat code. If you're not using it, man, that's on you.
Oh, you ever watch the time trials? You watch the ghosts in the racing games, and you're like, I do this every time around this corner. You see what you've done.
Yeah. You get better, right? Like, and that's where the simulation kind of helps you get a leg up. All these analytics and all that. Like a lot of that machine learning is just replaying back hundreds and hundreds of games, right? And again, if you're not using those tools, you better believe someone else is, and they're going to get the leg up and they're going to get the advantage. And that, I respect to each their own, but I'm taking advantage. You know what I'm saying? I love technology and I love tinkering all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next for the Autoplay Area podcast?
I've been digging the formula, right? Like every 2-week cadence is sustainable for me to do all the other shit I got going on. A lot of people ask me like, how do you fit that in? And I honestly profess that I've had to sacrifice the time I'd spent playing video games, and I've carved the chunk out of there to dedicate to podcasting, and that's worked out well because it hasn't come out of like my personal relationship or anything like that. I would love to get more out there more regularly, but I think that's what I'm going to stick with. I think that's a winning formula for consistency, right? I would always push people to be consistent, right? Like in this game, consistency is what kind of like keeps those algorithms working in your favor, right? To get your content out there. I don't know what's going to happen when the world goes back to normal and I can do face-to-face interviews. I think this is an interesting evolution of the podcast, you know, is being able to get in a room and get around a table and get on that vibe, you know what I'm saying? Because I think that will naturally tend to be much more intimate, even though I feel like you're right in the room with me, Benja. We just airing it out.
Yeah, as always, man. You know, it's one of those things. You know, we didn't have to have a prep interview or whatever. We kind of know each other, so and that's what this podcast. I mean, that's what I'm doing here. I love what you're doing. I told you before. I think, you know, I don't know of a better game development podcast.
Shit.
You know, I just want you to go ahead and print up the shirts. You know, #1 game dev podcast, and you know.
I love it, man. I love your energy, Benja. You're always pushing me to embrace my brashness and go for it, man. Because, you know, young 20-something-year-old John was all about that. 30-something-year-old John is, you know, teetering a bit, you know, like trying to dance those lines of catering to as many people as possible. But I want to earn it, bro. I want to at least get on the chart. Like, give me some chart that shows a #1. It could be 100, it could be 1,000, but I want to be able to claim, look at this chart, 1 Autoplay area, printed the shirt, let's go.
Nice.
I want to get there. I'm going to get there. Consistency, however many years, but I'm going to get there.
That's right. Hey, man, your energy is a beautiful thing. You've been pushing, keeping it going. I love your vibe, love what you're doing with the Autoplay area podcast. You know, I still want to hear your Kazakhstan stories from the ATX airport code.
Damn, bro.
So we'll find out about that. But that's it. That's all I got for now, man. Once again, yeah, you got a good number of people came through and learned a lot from what you had going on. Melissa Bean, you know, Raphael's in here, Diego Nuo, Bob Villinger, good to see you. Joff Marine Design, Tribe Called Mel. Hey, see something, say nothing. We don't have that. You know, shout out to Maui also. It's your dog, right?
Is he back? Is he in the background? Yeah, you hear that?
I hear a little bit. Hear the dog a little bit.
Mailman just showed up. That's what happened. He's like, get off my lawn, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love it, man. I'll be back here as a viewer for when Raph comes on. I'm looking forward to that one later today.
All right. You know, it's always a question mark. No one knows what's going to happen with the discussions between me and Raph. So we'll see.
Smoke bomb, Shinobi in the house. All right, brother. Peace out, Benja.
Thank you for your time, my man. Take care.
Thank you, man. We out. All right.
Now we're having awkwardness with the button. I love it. I love it. So yeah, once again, that's John Diaz, a technical game designer, Full Sail, Rockstar, Amazon, Midway, Bungie. He's doing his thing. Be sure to follow him at his, I'll have it linked up. You should be able to find it on my profile. Also, he's running the Autoplay Area podcast, which is all about one-on-one interviews with game developers. I am on episode #2. Make sure you check that one out if you want to hear me get raw about some game development stuff. And if you're not into podcasts, you know, make sure that you download your podcast player and start getting in on that action, because that's where a lot of the goodness is. And if you're missing out, you're missing out. Don't forget, we're going to have Eddie Fichinkel on, Finichkel. Why do I keep saying Fichinkel? Eddie Finichkel on, marketing expert, an entrepreneur. So a lot of you creatives really getting into the entrepreneur media side of things. He's the guy to talk to. He used to be a graphic designer and switched over into marketing entrepreneurship. Then we also have Patrick Hickey Jr., comic book writer, teacher, and author of the Mind Behind the Games book series. So he's talked to a lot of game developers, but he's coming at it from an author-writer angle. And we also have a special guest. I will announce that probably tomorrow once I nail down the time. But we're going to do it on Sunday. A new special guest got added to the lineup, so I'm excited for that. thank you all for staying here with us. Make sure that you comment, follow along, and check out the podcast, Mr. Benja's A to D Experience, and my other podcast, Show versus Business, if you're so inclined. I really appreciate you all. Interact, stay positive, and keep this thing going. Peace.